Hey everyone! Today I want to share with you all some hot takes, some spicy opinions. I'm gonna spill the tea about JRPGs. Now, these are gonna be about general topics related to the genre, not about specific games, so you won't find me saying stuff like X game is overrated or Y game is underrated and stuff like that, although I might use some games as examples. Also, please keep in mind that all of these are my subjective opinions. And with that being said, please enjoy this random footage of various old JRPGs as I share my potentially controversial views on my favorite genre of video game. Number 1. Random encounters are good, actually. Random encounters are maybe the most maligned aspect of older RPGs for most people. But I think they add an element of tension and unpredictability to exploration that other encounter systems can't really match. A lot of old RPGs are all about resource management, managing your MP, your HP, sometimes even your inventory. Imagine yourself 5 levels deep into a dungeon. You're pretty hurt, and you only saved up enough MP to cast a spell that will safely teleport you out of the dungeon. 6 steps away from you is a treasure chest. Do you open the chest and risk triggering an encounter on the way? Or do you play it safe and warp outside so you can restock and try the dungeon again? These are the sort of strategic decisions that get lost without random encounters. If you can see the enemies on the map and possibly even avoid them, exploration starts feeling a lot less scary and suspenseful. Another factor is dungeon design. If you have to design dungeons with roaming monsters in mind, suddenly all the rooms and corridors have to be way bigger to accommodate them, making the dungeon less cramped and claustrophobic, and therefore less dangerous feeling. Now, that doesn't mean that random encounters can't be badly implemented. If the encounter rate is too high, then instead of adding tension, they can add frustration. Who hasn't groaned when they were one step away from an exit or a treasure chest, only to be stopped by a random encounter? But I still feel they get a bad rap. There are tons of beloved classic RPGs, like most Dragon Quests and Final Fantasies, that use this system, and people were just fine with it. I'm not saying every RPG needs to have random encounters though. There are games I like that don't use them, like Final Fantasy XII or Chrono Trigger, but those games also have a very different vibe from the more intense old school dungeon crawlers that do. Number 2. Grinding is fun. There is nothing more boring to a lot of people than having to mindlessly grind in order to gain the levels or money required to progress in an RPG. And while I can sympathize with that, to me grinding can be a very zen-like, almost therapeutic experience. Look, I don't want to brag or anything, but I finished the 7th Saga, a notoriously grindy game, and I had a lot of fun with it. If you're grinding for a long time, you enter this meditative state of mind, where all that matters is your numbers going up. Grinding might be a fairly mindless activity, but it's an activity with a purpose. You are working towards a goal. The goal of becoming stronger and gaining the ability to face the dangers ahead. And I think that's a lot of fun, personally. Even in games that don't really require grinding, I tend to do it anyway, often leading to me being slightly overpowered. But I just can't help myself. Number 3. RPGs should be difficult. Now, this one might sound slightly incendiary, so I guess I should clarify. I'm all for easy difficulty options. I'm all for making games more accessible. It's just that for me, personally, the RPGs that are harder tend to be much more memorable. I already talked about this a little bit in my Final Fantasy II video, where I said that the game's dungeons stuck with me because they were so long and arduous, whereas shorter and easier dungeons in other games feel more forgettable. RPG narratives often have very high stakes. Sometimes the entire world is in danger. And I personally feel more immersed in a story if the peril the characters are facing is matched by the peril that I, the player, am facing in the game. It's hard to take a villain seriously if I keep wiping the floor with the enemies they're throwing at me. That's why I enjoy games like the original Mother or the 7th Saga, because beating them feels like a genuine accomplishment. I should clarify that I still enjoy RPGs with a more moderate difficulty. Final Fantasy VII or Chrono Trigger aren't particularly hard, but they still require you to pay attention, and you can't just mash your way to victory. What I have a problem with are games that offer up no resistance at all, because if you can just mash buttons and win every fight without even having to look at the screen, then what's even the point? Number 4. I don't care about remakes. Recently it was the 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy IX, and people were clamoring for an announcement of a potential remake of the game. And all I could think about was, why? Why do you need a remake of Final Fantasy IX? The game is still there. It still holds up. It still looks and sounds fantastic. In fact, it's one of the best looking games on the PS1. It still plays great as well. What would a remake even accomplish here? Now, I don't mind ports and remasters as much, because generally all they do is make the game playable on modern systems, add some quality of life stuff, and maybe rebalance the game a little bit. The Final Fantasy Pixel remasters are a great example in my opinion, since they update the graphics and music without compromising the original vision too much. Whereas something like the Final Fantasy III DS remake strays way too far to be recognizable from the original. I like having access to some of the quality of life changes that come with modern remasters, but I still want an experience that's as authentic as possible. Changing up an original game by completely overhauling its gameplay or visual style just seems kinda superfluous to me. At that point, just make a new game. Number 5. We need more female player characters. Alright, this might be the most controversial take, which is kinda sad, but I find the lack of female player characters in JRPGs pretty disappointing. It's especially galling in games where your character is supposed to be an avatar that you name yourself and project yourself onto. There's really no excuse anymore to not have a female character option in games like these. Of course, I would also love to see more named and voiced female protagonists, like in Final Fantasy games, which are also very male-dominated. But my main problem lies more with games like Dragon Quest XI, or most Dragon Quest games really, I just wanted to pick a relatively recent example, where the gender of your character really doesn't matter. They're basically blank slates, and you're supposed to project yourself onto them. So why not let me play as a woman too? The common counter-argument to this is that this would require additional work, and I mean, yeah, obviously. But I think it's worth it, considering that around 47% of RPG players are female. That's almost half of your audience. And is it really that much work? For a lot of games, it's just adding a new model and some voice lines, that's it. Atlus as a company are especially bad about this, but I'm also disappointed that Dragon Quest is still mostly doing this, even though a few of the older games in the series actually give you the choice of playing as a woman. Imagine the new Fallout or Elder Scrolls coming out, and you're forced into playing a male character. It would be regarded as a huge step backwards for a good reason. Now, there are a lot of games that I personally love that suffer from this issue, like the Mother series or most Dragon Quests. And it's not like I can't play and enjoy a game with a fixed male protagonist. I would just prefer to have the option, and I don't think that's too much to ask for. And it's kinda shocking to me that this is still an issue in many modern RPGs. So there you go, that was 5 of my hottest takes about JRPGs. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and tell me your own hot JRPG takes in the comments below. I'm Dizzy, and I'll be seeing ya. Thanks for watching.